Hello everyone, I'm 25 female. I'm in quite a predicament and need a place to vent about it for a while. This is going to be a long post because I have a lot of background information to share with you. Let's cut right to the chase. My adopted older brother Gerald is one of the foulest people I've ever known. He's always had a chip on his shoulder about the fact that he was adopted. I'll admit that part of me has always felt bad for him to an extent. My mom has always tried to treat him with love and respect, but it was always clear that she had different feelings for me. You see, Gerald was the result of an affair my father was engaged and committed a long time ago. My parents were able to persevere through this little bump in the road of marriage, but as many of us are unfortunately all too aware, infidelity can take a toll on a marriage. Add in the issue of pregnancy with dad's mistress, and you can see how the situation could be toxic. I admit I'm only aware of a small extent of these issues because my parents did not discuss the matter often when I was growing up. Gerald is a few years older than me, so I've only heard about these things secondhand. Still, it was clear that the family dynamics was forever impacted by this event. Dad broke off the affair with the mistress, but decided to keep the baby as he felt that, since he conceived the child, it was now his responsibility. He felt he owed it to both his mistress and my mother. Mom was not exactly excited about the idea of taking on a child that wasn't her own, but she agreed to help raise Gerald if Dad agreed to not include, Gerald as the family heir in his will. She thought it was important that they raised a child who was their own flesh and blood, a true product of the union of their marriage and their love. So, while Mom has always tried to remain impartial, I think it was obvious to everybody that she preferred me. Dad has always tried his best just to remain fair as well as, has done so much for Gerald, but Gerald always remained unappreciative. He has always been a very vindictive child. When I was a little girl, he would grow jealous of the attention I would receive for being the younger sister. He would often beat me up in the backyard and lie to my parents and tell them I fell while playing. Gerald was so big even as a kid, and who hits a little girl, especially their own little sister? Gerald remained jealous and vindictive even as we got older, often deciding to ruin family functions that were centered around me. Even though my parents did everything for him and I tried my best to show him respect as my older brother, even though he never truly felt like my older brother, he could not return the same favor for me. I remember my 16th birthday party. He got drunk and drove his car directly into my brand new car my parents had just bought me that day. I was so upset. He said it was an accident, but I could tell by the look in his eyes that he was a liar. He was lying. My mom knew the truth, but Dad took up for him. Dad had the habit of sticking up for Gerald in situations where Gerald was truly the one who was at fault. And while I know Dad was only trying to be fair and inclusive to Gerald and his feelings, in order to make him feel like one of the family, all Dad's pampering served to accomplish was enabling Gerald's worst traits and tendencies. There was also my prom night when Gerald would not stop farting in front of my prom date, even going as far as to rudely fart at the dinner. It was so embarrassing, and to top it all off, Gerald was drunk as a skunk that night and vomited all over my beautiful prom dress. It ruined the entire night. A night that was supposed to be my special evening. I guess Gerald was just jealous because he never got to have a prom date because no girl in her right mind would go out with him. While I was growing up and doing well in school, making good grades, holding down a job, and just generally making the right decisions in life, Gerald continued to sit around and do nothing but whine and complain about his lot in life. My dad lied everything that he could to try to help him get out of his own world and make something for himself, including landing him several decent jobs. I would have greatly appreciated having myself. Gerald would always squander the opportunities, choosing just to blow off from work or show up drunk on the job. My dad would continue to make excuses for Gerald, even making excuses for his drug use and alcoholism. But as expected, this continued to make Gerald act out even worse. Gerald caused so many problems living with my parents. Dad finally bought Gerald his own place just so that he would be out of their hair. Dad pays his rent, everything. Meanwhile, I paid all my bills myself, and I worked hard to get my own apartment without even asking for a dime from my parents. I know Dad was just trying to help Gerald, but truthfully, I resented all this and still do. Throughout adulthood, I've basically tried to avoid Gerald whenever possible, exchanging polite pleasantries with him at family functions as best as I could muster. Unfortunately, the reason I'm struggling right now and feeling the urge to vent to the internet today is an event that's brought Gerald back to the forefront of my life. Something utterly baffling and unthinkable has taken place. Dad has gone missing. First, there's simply no reason for Dad to even want to go missing. He loves Mom clearly, and he loves me and Gerald, I'm telling you. And he's happily retired. Every time I've talked to him over the past couple of years, he's always been happy. In fact, the only time he ever sounded stressed or depressed is when the subject of Gerald rolled around. I know, in all these disappearance cases, that's exactly what family always says, but I truly mean it. I know Dad, and he would not just up and abandon us like this, without even the slightest warning. He cares too much about all of us to put us through something like that. Second, there wasn't even the slightest indication that this would happen leading up to this. Dad's been acting like this same old cheerful, happy-go-lucky self. He's not displayed any signs of depression or irritability or any suspicious behavior. Believe me and Mom have been racking our brains trying to think of any sort of sign or clue that could perhaps lead us to Dad's whereabouts, but so far, we've managed to come up with nothing. Before any of you ask me about it, yes, we have contacted the authorities. They're doing the best that they can and working hard on that case, but even they're coming up with no leads. It's as if Dad has simply vanished into thin air without a trace. It's driving me and Mom crazy. We've been stressed and scared for Dad's safety beyond belief, and neither of us has been able to get any sleep during all this. Every moment wasted feels like a moment that someone out there might be hurting Dad, or doing something even worse. This is a scary predicament I would not wish on my worst enemy. Of course, my worst enemy is also going through this time situation, because Gerald is indeed my worst enemy. And, of course, he doesn't seem to care much at all about any of this, and Gerald has always had a self-absorbed, nonchalant attitude about just about everything in life, largely due to the fact that Dad has always been around to pick up the pieces and bail Gerald out when he screwed something up. You would think that for the reason alone, Gerald might be at least a little bit distraught over Dad's sudden vanishing like me and Mom are, but instead all Gerald seems concerned about is his position as family heir. I'm not even kidding or exaggerating when I say it's one of those first things out of his mouth after he got the news, that me and Mom had filed a missing persons report on Dad. I'm not even sure if Gerald has the intelligence or stealth skills necessary to have been involved in Dad's disappearance, but he sure is not doing a good job of acting like he cares about it. This fact alone is suspicious enough to me, but I don't want to think Gerald is evil enough to literally pull off something like this. Ugh. Especially if the unthinkable has happened, and Dad is indeed, well, deceased. Perhaps the reality will sink in soon when Gerald realizes Mom is not going to be doling out handouts and free money to Gerald the way that Dad loved to. Mom's been wanting to cut off all ties with Gerald for a long time now, and with Dad not around, she's not going to have any time for Gerald's incompetence and negativity, especially if, well, he has not had a single intention of helping me or Mom find Dad. Me and Mom have been working tirelessly with the authorities, looking for clues, updates, any signs of Dad's whereabouts. We've been posting flyers all over the neighborhood, posting endlessly on Facebook, sharing post after post, making sure every person in a 100-mile radius is aware Dad is missing. I'd like to thank all of you on this post for letting me vent about it. I would appreciate any advice I can get, and I feel like I'm at the end of my rope. I'm only wanting this horrible nightmare to end. I just want to find Dad and get my life back to the way that it was. The last time Mom saw Dad, he said he was simply running to the store to pick up some groceries. The authorities can't even find his vehicle or even any evidence that Dad ever went to the store. I just don't know what to do. Update number 1. Hey guys, OP here, back for another update. First, I'd like to thank you for the supportive comments and genuine concern I received from just about everybody who commented so far. Words cannot even express how much I appreciate you. I feel a little less alone in the world knowing I can go here and vent and ask for some advice. Unfortunately, my update includes nothing that resolves with Dad. And Mom and the authorities still know about as much as we knew when I wrote the first post, which is absolutely nothing. Still, we're working tirelessly at trying to find him, and we're still handing out flyers, making phone calls to radio stations and social media sites to help get the word out about my missing dad. This has become like a full-time job. Such is the stress and toll it's taken on me and Mom. Unfortunately, I still cannot say the same about the level of concern displayed by my foul and rotten adopted brother Gerald. He has still done nothing to contribute to the investigation into Dad's whereabouts, and when he has even bothered to attend the family meetings devoted to discussing Dad, all Gerald seems to want to talk about is where he's going to get some money from Dad's bank. The straw that broke the camel's back for me and Mom was earlier today when we met up at the local Chili's to discuss our findings regarding the investigation of Dad. Gerald showed up and immediately began ordering margaritas. He started a cocky tone in his voice, saying things like how he was, quote, going to make some changes in the family, and soon everybody would have to show him some respect. Frankly, it sounds like Gerald was losing his mind, and the fantasy of having Dad's wealth was clearly corrupting him, even worse than he had already been before. Finally, me and Mom snapped because we've both had enough. We both laughed in Gerald's face and reminded him that he was the adopted offspring of Dad's mistress. Mom reiterated the fact that Gerald was not even included in Dad's will as the family heir. Gerald immediately began screaming and causing a scene inside the restaurant. People began to stare, and it was quite embarrassing. As Gerald stumbled out of the restaurant, he vowed to get his revenge on me and Mom. Neither of us have heard from Gerald since this outburst at Chili's earlier today, but I'm worried he's got something drastic planned. He's a pretty pedantic, vindictive person, and I would not put anything past him at this point. Update number 2. Hello everyone, OP here, back for another update. I wish I could tell you all the things are looking up, but me and Mom are still struggling in our search to find Dad. If you've been following my post so far, you'll know from the last post that me and Mom blew up on Gerald. He got offended and vowed revenge against us, and we still haven't heard from him, and so far he's ignored all of our attempts to contact. I admit, I suspect he's probably up to something, but I'm not sure what he's up to. The main reason I'm even writing this update today is to share the biggest clue me and Mom have found out so far in our investigation. First, let me just tell you all that Mom and Dad live in a large home. Dad was a successful investment banker who made a lot of money at his job before retiring. So, the family has always been quite large and quite nice as well. On top of that, Dad has always been on something of a hoarder. He loves to collect stuff, and he never throws away a tool or a screw or anything, just in case he'll have to use it for that furniture again, because, of Dad's hoarder nature, searching through all the man's belongings has been quite the difficult task. We initially thought the searching through the mounds of junk amassed by Dad would be futile, but admittedly me and Mom are running out of options and have been feeling desperate. We decided to set aside a day to tackle searching through everything Dad owns. Through our searching the house, high and low, we managed to find a crumbled-up-looking piece of notebook paper with a note on it. The note made me and Mom's heart sink. It was an envelope, and it read goodbye on the outside of it. And as we read the note, it detailed how Dad had supposedly decided to run away and start a new life. He also said not to bother looking for him. First, This was not like his personality at all, and second, me and Mom immediately noticed something suspicious about the handwriting. It looked just like Gerald's. I'll keep you all filled on any developments. Update number 3. Hello people, OP here, and I've got another update for you. I have a feeling me and Mom are getting closer in our search for Dad. We still do not know where he's at, but I'm starting to feel a bit better. First, we still have not heard even a word from Gerald. He has continued to avoid our calls since our family meeting at Chili's, where he made a scene and caused a bunch of ruckus. He's a coward. I'm growing more and more suspicious of him day by day, and especially since we found the note that was supposedly from Dad, despite it being looked like it was written by Gerald himself. We turned in the note to the authorities, who said that they would do a handwriting comparison, but the authorities just told us that they've been having trouble getting in touch with Gerald as well. I think Gerald has a feeling his house of cards is soon to be unraveled. So he's laying low like a coward in hopes that this will all just blow away. Whatever schemes he's involved in, we're going to find out exactly what happened. Well, to make matters even worse, strangely lately, there has been another strange development regarding the case of finding my missing dad. Recently, strange posts have been appearing on his Facebook page. I'm talking weeks after inactivity since we first reported him missing. The posts have been strange, saying things about how nobody should look for him because he's happy with his new life. Whoever's posting on this account certainly isn't Dad. The person has been making spelling errors Dad would never make. And the person has not been responding to messages or comments either. The authorities said that they're able to track the Facebook account's activity to a burner phone, but they were unable to identify the owner of the phone beyond the fact that the phone's signal, well, was indeed coming from our hometown. In fact, the signal was close to exactly where Gerald lives in town. I have a feeling we're getting closer to the bottom of this mystery. Update number 4. Hey guys, OP here, and I've got another update for you. I can barely contain my excitement, so I'm going to skip to the pleasantries and cut right to the chase. First, after feeling like me and Mom were finally starting to make some breakthroughs in the quest to find Dad, we began feeling as if we were hitting yet another roadblock. Gerald was still missing himself, and his refusal to comply or meet with the authorities was beginning to look as if this case was going to go cold. Me and Mom had no idea how long Gerald would be willing to remain on the lam. While we knew that the longer he was missing himself, the more suspicious his role in the case itself began to seem. And Mom was truly just eager to get over this as well. We wanted to find out the truth about Dad, even if that meant facing the unthinkable horror of accepting that perhaps Gerald had murdered him. We just wanted this to be over with. Me and Mom have searched just about every place we could think of where we thought there might be possibly clues to Dad's whereabouts. But there was still one place that we had not searched: Gerald's house. Gerald himself had quite a decent-sized house as well, entirely paid for by Father, of course. So I knew searching his house would be a daunting task. I volunteered for the job because I did not want Mom to be seen out there. It made more sense for me to be visiting Gerald. Of course, when I arrived at Gerald's house, I could see that nobody was home. I could tell that somebody had been coming and going into the household, but I could not see more than that. Clearly, Gerald was not hiding too far from the authorities, as it was clear he was still visiting at least sometimes. After scoping the place out, I was able to climb in through a loose window in the back of the home. As I began searching Gerald's house, I could see how nasty and disgusting he lived. There was a garbage everywhere, and the place smelled horrible. I made my way to the basement and nearly screamed with joy at what I saw. Dad was sitting there looking tired and bruised. Obviously, Gerald had been keeping him in the basement the entire time. I freed Father immediately from his binds, and he told me everything that happened. Well, I'm busy at the moment, but I wanted to quickly tell you all that we found Dad. I'll be back soon with a more developmental update, because I don't want to leave you guys hanging. Anyways, see you soon. Final update. Hey guys, OP here again, and this is going to be the final update. Once again, I'd like to thank you for the kind supportive comments and great advice. I appreciate you all immensely, and I don't think I could have had the strength to find Dad without the support I received from you guys. That being said, I wanted to wrap up what happened with Gerald, and Dad told me about how Gerald had run into him while he was at the store. Apparently, Gerald lured Dad back to his house with the promise of showing him a prized baseball card. As Dad is an avid fan of baseball cards, Gerald knocked out Dad and kept him tied up in the basement, only feeding him just enough food and water to barely survive. I was astounded at the cruelty, and so were the authorities when we reported everything. The cops hid behind Gerald's house, so he would not suspect a thing. When he returned home from wherever he had been hiding all day long, Gerald walked into the house and the police tackled him and arrested him. Dad made it clear that he had every intention of pressing charges, and he told Gerald as he was being hauled away that he was out of the family for good. Wow. Gerald admitted that he had hatched up the entire scheme to get Dad's money. Well, and he admitted that he had not once cared about us or loved us, and I could tell Dad was extremely hurt by Gerald's remarks, but I was glad that Gerald was being taken away to jail, where he could no longer hurt anyone or ruin our family. Mom especially was relieved. Now, life is finally peaceful again. I can tell Dad is hurt and traumatized by what happened with Gerald, but he seems to be picking up the pieces and appreciating the blessings he does have in life. Thank you, everybody, for reading.